for you, actually, and so it's going to be posted on our customer portal, that recording, and we'll also have the QA questions posted there as well. You can submit questions using the Q&A panel on the right-hand side, and then, as I said, we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the session, but those that we don't get to, we'll either respond to you directly or we'll post them on the portal alongside with the recording. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Fred Lensink, who's going to give us the Explorer overview. Fred?
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. And so now we'll enter our overview of Explorer. Again, we'll just do a few PowerPoint slides, spend the bulk of the time in the live demo. So what is Tidal Explorer? An optimization toolkit, and emphasis on toolkit. So there's going to be a number of different tools in your arsenal to maximize the performance of your Tidal workload environments. And at this point, it's probably useful to identify exactly what an environment is. So think of an environment as your production master and all of its associated non-production environments. So it's conceivable that you could have multiple environments, one production master in one geographic location, another production master and its associated non-prod masters in another location. In terms of what are the key capabilities, interactive graphical visualizations is where we'll first start. You're going to find out that we have dashboards to monitor your environments. And so after having downloaded, installed, configured, and licensed your Explorer tool, you're going to find out that you're going to be able to have a quick dashboard with mock LEDs to indicate the healthiness of the ability to see data, the ability to see that I have a live connection to the master, the ability to see that I have a live connection to the underlying database. And in that regard, there's also going to be some interactive graphs, XY graphs in regard to master status. We'll also be able to create job and calendar graphs and the reports. Notice that graphs is in quote unquote. In this product, in the context of this product, a graph is a visualization. And then you'll be able to use those visualizations to see the interrelationships and calendars and jobs and their hierarchies, as well as the job dependencies, job and group dependencies. This is an example of the high-level multi-status, multi-instance status. And so without getting into too much detail, at this point, just concentrate on the fact that, I have green mock LEDs, red mock LEDs, gray mock LEDs, indicating, whether or not a particular target is enabled, has data, whether or not there's a master state, whether or not we have a good database connection. This is an example of the initial version. Many of you might have seen Explorer demos in the past, and this was the version that was used for that. What you're going to find out is that we have another version that's going to be available, or that is already available to be downloaded. But real quickly, let's note the fact that we have a status in the upper left-hand corner, and then we have multiple tabbed indications for system activity, queues, connections. And remember that that connection tab can also give you a status of all of the connections in each one of the particular environments. In this first version, we had a master statistics that only had job statistics and jobs done versus jobs to go. We're going to find out that that's been enhanced based on input from our customers. You're going to see that I have a much more powerful master statistics screen, and we'll be demonstrating that live in a few minutes. What we're looking at right now is a visualization, graphic visualization, interactive graphic visualization of a job graph. Well, actually, there's two different ones here. There's any number of different types of job graphs. We're not going to have time to go through all the possible offerings, but in this particular slide, there's two shown. One is your standard, I would call it the default one. It's indicating a job group and the various subgroups and the jobs and the color-coded interrelationships, whether they're job dependencies or parent-child relationships. And then there's more specific, different types of job graphs that you can make. The one shown on the right showing you the dependency chain you can follow up and down in regard to job dependencies. Here, we're looking at another interactive graphic visualization. This is for calendar views, and we'll find out how these become interactive when we do the demo. But if you know anything about calendars, you know that they can be very complex. Calendars can include groups of calendars, which can exclude groups of calendars. And you can see that there's visualizations available for this. And this is not available in any way, shape, or form in your Java client or your web client. Other key capabilities are going to be comparison capabilities. We're going to be able to compare schedules, job group definitions. That's going to come in handy when perhaps you've made a change and you want to make sure that the change has taken as you have intended, or maybe you performed a transport from a job group from one environment to another, and you want to make sure that you didn't miss anything, so you can compare the two, make sure they're the same. Also, the comparison capabilities are good for discussing in a forum and collaborating with individuals to talk about how, for example, a schedule or a job group might have changed. You'll also be able to do comparisons between components and their versions. So different versions of different adapters and agents, etc. A quick, easy way to get a side-by-side comparison between different target environments. And then finally, for the more technically oriented, or for those who are more interested in a deep dive, we can actually compare entire schemas between prod and dev, or QA and dev, or get in and compare individual tables between different instances. An example of that here is a job structure comparison. The one on the left, you can see there's kind of like 4 major groups, and the one on the right, an additional group has been added, highlighted in purple. You're going to find out that there's lots of different ways that this product is going to be able to highlight and differentiate differences between one environment and the other, one table and the other, one job group and the other. This is another example of comparison, and in this case, it goes all the way down to field level data. Just real quickly, you can see that this is a group called test group. Someone made a copy of it, test group copy. What I'm looking at here are variables at the top of that group, and I can see in this color-coded fashion that in the original, the top one, I have a variable that had a value of A, whereas this one had a different value. And so, good way to see that either you have made the intended change that you wanted, or that you're aware that there is a difference. Another key capability of Tidal Explorer is a set of analysis and resolution tools. So in addition to there being specific reports in regard to job and calendar graphs, there's another whole suite of application reports that we're going to be detailing for you. Once again, in the time we have, we won't be able to cover all the reports, but we will give you a couple quick examples. There's also sophisticated search and find capabilities throughout the product, whether or not you're in a graph, whether or not you're in a report, whether or not you want to search for a particular piece of text in a database. And then finally, a very powerful tool in terms of resolution or speed to resolution, the ability to do job, run, output comparison. I had a job that ran this month end. It completed abnormally. Maybe I would like to compare that to last month end. Take a look at the output and be able to use that as an insight for resolution. In terms of those application reports, you can see they're color-coded into 3 different categories. Those that are interested in the design, for you analyzing the design of your environment, such as how big is a particular job group. In terms of historical analysis, I can do things like jobs run in a period, the one highlighted. And then finally, some housekeeping reports. Maybe I would like to clean things up and get rid of jobs that I don't need anymore, jobs that have been disabled, or events that aren't completely configured. Here is an example of the job, run, search, and output compare. Again, that color-coded differentiation for a speedy difference between the one on the right and the one on the left. Maybe one ran normally, the other ran abnormally. I can compare the output and give me an idea of how to proceed. So, what are the key user benefits of Tidal Explorer? ability to design better jobs, diagnose and resolve faster, and drive continuous improvement. So I think that's all we have in regard to the slides. So we're going to move on to a live demo, spend the bulk of this time in that demo. So bear with me while I bring up that environment. So I've just entered a remote desktop. Just as a quick reminder, notice that I can go to Tidal Automation or TidalSoftware.com, and under Solutions, you can pick Tidal Explorer and review the information that's been provided there. Hopefully that'll provide you additional information and encourage you to download and try the product. In order to download, you would sign on to the portal, and that's this other tab, and make your way to the point where you can download not only the software, but the documentation. Documentation is going to be invaluable for you in regard to the install, as well as the operation. There's a lot of detail that you need to get into in order to really master Tidal Explorer, and the documentation is going to be your first defense in that regard. So let's leave the browser behind. In this environment, you can see that I have installed Explorer. I have a license in place. I've already been through the download, the install, the configuration. I have my Tidal Explorer service up and running. And you can see that this is a Windows service. Tidal Explorer is designed to run in a Windows environment. If we look over to the left, you'll see I have a couple different icons. There's an admin icon. That's the one that we applied the license, created the configuration, applied it to the running service so that users could then come in and utilize the product. And so that's where we're headed now. What we're going to get is a splash screen, followed by a configuration screen. And this is where I can verify, my expectations. Yep, I expected to see 4 different environments. And you can kind of get an idea here, again, reminding you what an environment is. An environment is one production master and its associated non-production masters. And additionally, what I failed to say before is that I can also have historical backups that are available. So when I do comparisons, I can do comparisons within the same instance. There's 4 instances shown here. I can do comparisons across instances such as prod and dev. I could do comparisons between the live master database and an historical backup in any one of those instances. So we'll leave this behind, and we do this by closing this configuration screen, and then that's going to take us into the product. So the first thing you see here, and actually we'll kind of declutter for a moment, once again, is this particular target enabled? Does it have data? What's the state of the master connection? What's the state of the database? So you can see we have variations on a theme here. I have one environment. There is no master in this environment, and yet I can still use this product to go in and look at the jobs in that historical online backup, that historical roll-off. This is another environment where I have a master. The connection is enabled, but the master is down. And then finally, and notice those two were in an environment called Works in Progress. Here I have another environment called Active Tidal Demo Systems, where I have an old sales demo environment and a new sales demo environment. So we're going to move on to the dashboard, and this is, as you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, 3.02. So this is a dashboard that has improvements in regard to our master status. So first of all, notice that this is a default layout. If you look closely, once again, you're going to see, let's see if we can get some other status shown here, with some green environments. So you'll be able to look at the status of this particular environment, even the status of particular connections. This is the same type of information that would be available from your web client or Java client. Same here with the queues. What is the status? Are my queues enabled and running? What is the system activity in regard to what's going on in that particular instance? And again, that's the same as if you were in the web client or the Java client. What's new and different is our master status. You should be aware of the fact that I can save and load different configurations of this environment. So for example, I could go in, I think I might have a workspace that I could load. I call this one tabs. I have another workspace that I want to load, which is going back to the defaults. And then I have those two different workspaces available to me. So right now I'm in the default. I'm going to go to the tabbed environment. And in that environment, you can see that I have the ability to just set them all up as tabs. Or I could go back to my default. And there's any number of different configurations that you can do here, because each one of these are undockable, maximizable, and can be changed in regard to whether they're horizontal, whether they're vertical, etc. So let's maximize our master status. Notice that by default, it's showing me total jobs and jobs done. We could set it up similar to the first version of this, where we also had jobs to go. Notice that I defaulted to a week in regard to the range, but what's really powerful in regard to this is the fact that I can set this up to show months and weeks of data. And over time, you're going to get accustomed to how a particular set of information should look. So you could visually say, I'm used to seeing a certain skyline, if you'll call it here, a certain skyline in regard to a weekly schedule or a monthly schedule or a month end. And over time, you could gauge differences based on your familiarity of how you're used to seeing a particular week or a particular month. So here you can actually see the markers for each one of my weeks. And actually, I might even be able to, nope, that's fine. But do notice the floating legend. Notice this viewport can be used to focus on, for example, a particular week. In this case, it's actually a particular day. Notice that this can be slid. Notice that I can go over and pick a particular area and just get a new highlighted area. I can use my mouse wheel. Right? I'm scrolling backward on my mouse wheel to go back and look at the full range of data. Here I'm going forward to get the full range of data. Additionally, I can enable a vertical scroll. Notice here there's blanks. This may be an indication that the service was down or the master was down. We can also do vertical scrolling, so I had to check that on. And now I can use my mouse wheel to change the wait a minute, vertical scroll. Yep. Vertical zoom, vertical scroll. I expected that to go up and down. Also notice that I can show X lines, Y lines, and notice the indicators on the bottom as to what date I'm on, what count I'm on the vertical axis. And then for one of the more advanced features that we simply don't have time to get into a discussion about is job run regression. And so I would encourage you to go in and check the manuals in regard to how this can be used. But long story short, you can use this to get a gauge of job throughput. So let's imagine if you had a machine that was running into trouble and because it didn't have enough memory and you added memory, you could actually go and use job run regression to graph the throughput of the jobs and see that, yes, an improvement was made as a result of having added memory. The before, you can see that using this job run regression, the slope of jobs per minute was, I was doing 10 jobs a minute. I added memory and I was able to increase that to maybe 100 jobs a minute. In that regard, also note, and this will serve for just about any screen that we're in, is that I have the ability to print. And so here, what we would do is we would set it up to say, I would really like, since this is a horizontal setup, and I'm waiting for my, it's just taking them a minute. Actually, don't want headers and footers. Maybe I prefer this one. So we're going to fit to one page. And I don't think I need to. Let's see if we make it landscape. We're all set in regard to setting up reports. And again, these type of reports are useful in many different situations. It could be simply that you're required to create documentation, regardless of what the subject is. On the other hand, maybe you need to make a presentation. Maybe you need to discuss possible changes or changes that have been incurred in a collaborative method with other groups in your business. This is going to provide you a great tool for that. So in general, you're going to be able to do this type of setup and to create printouts anywhere throughout the product. With that said, I think we're going to leave our master status behind. Remember, we're undocked at this point. And that same dockability feature is really available for all of these different areas. So in that regard, we're going to close our dashboard. And remember, I could have multiple dashboards up at once for all the different instances that I'm able to connect to. And so we'll close this screen. Oh no, went one too many X's. And a review of our configuration splash screen. So again, 4 different dashboards available, but now we're going to get a look at our job graphs. So I need to pick which instance I wish to look at the jobs in. What will come up are all of the top level groups. I'm going to have the ability to graph, search, and report on all of those. It doesn't have to be at the top level. It could be at some sub group if so desired. The first example I'm going to give you will be a very large graph. So first of all, notice there's what is it, 3, 6, 8 different job graphs above the line, a couple different graphs below the line. In this regard, we'll just pick the top one. But in regard to variations on a theme, graph jobs that without job dependencies. I want to see such things as variable dependencies and file dependencies. Or maybe I want to get external dependencies, meaning within these job groups, there might be dependencies, but there also might be dependencies from one job group to another. So let's graph that job. And again, we're talking about interactive graphic visualization, similar to what you use in operations if you use graphical business views, but under a different heading, a different purpose. So when you first see this, you're not quite sure until I start, and again, I'm using my mouse wheel. You're not quite sure what you're seeing, and notice that I can use my pan. I can pan left, pan right. Notice that I can zoom in if I so desire. To focus in. Notice that I have zoom in and zoom out magnifying glasses. But even at that, right, there's a lot of noise. A lot of noise to the left, a lot of noise to the right. Maybe I would prefer to declutter and focus on just this selected job. So the one with the purple ring. Well, that'll still serve. So I picked a small one there. And what we're seeing is a group, subgroup, subgroup, subgroup. And down here is a Windows job. Different jobs will have different types of jobs can be set up with different color coding. What we're seeing here in gray is parent-child relationships. What we're seeing here in red are job dependencies. There's other color coding. I think you can see an amber one here in the back. That would be a dependency that's going from one entirely separate group to another entirely separate group. And then in that regard, I think we're going to leave this one behind for now. And move on to a different job group. EXP new 2. We'll graph that job. And more specifically here, you can again see the major group and some of its jobs in dark blue. Other groups, other jobs, parent-child relationships, job dependencies. And then notice here we have different colorings for different, these are different types of jobs. These are Windows jobs, these are FTP jobs. And shown here, you can see that I have file dependencies. Those would be in pink. I think variable dependencies show up in green. An interesting feature of these is the fact that I can pick a particular job or a particular group and say, you know what, I'd like to see the properties of that particular job. So rather than having to know how to code a specialized SQL query, or rather than having to try and task someone to do that for you, you're already going to have the lowest level of detail available at your disposal instantly. And you'll notice that all I have to do is roll over one or the other. And what you're looking at is an augmented set of data. It's a combination of the job mass table, the job detail table. And so for those of you who would needed this type of information before, you had to know what the job mass table was. You had to know the SQL query to go after the information you sought. But here, that's all been done for you, and I can easily go in and get the lowest level of information out about a particular job, about a particular group, etc. The agent, for example, the name of the job. This is actually information about my FTP parameters, etc. Also notice, I'm not sure that I've shown it thus far, but the fact that I can toggle a layout either horizontally or vertically. So depending upon your inclinations. Also, maybe I prefer right angles, and we'll see more about that in a minute. So let's go back. We've seen our graph. Notice that I have the same menu that we had at the top level when we did our initial job graphing. So we've already got a feel for graphing. Let's do some searching. And we're going to search in this selected job. I think that's going to take me here. And actually, I think I want to search in this job. And notice the search panel. I can look for names. I can look for different types of jobs. Specifically, an FTP job versus an SAP job. I could look for all the jobs associated with a particular, all 5 Informatica adapters, or maybe one specific Informatica adapter. And then the way this is right now with these blackened buttons, you know, I don't care if it's active or inactive. I don't care if it's inserted or not. I can get more specific and say, no, I just want active jobs. And then I want jobs that have file dependencies, etc. And the interesting thing, I'm actually not sure if we're going to get much with what I picked there, but then you perform your search. I think he's probably going to come back blank. All right, we got one job. But had I had a host of jobs here, the interesting thing about doing this filter that's different than your web client or your Java client is once you've filtered and gotten the report in the web client or the Java client, there's no further filtering available. Whereas here, I can do one filter, you know, followed by another filter, followed by another filter, where I finally get to the point where I'm looking for what I'm searching for. The other, I'm going to close this guy. The other menu item was reports. So again, we talked about wanting to show you graphs and their reports. There's another set of reports we'll look at in a minute. Let's take a look at job run duration analysis. And taking a minute to generate. When this first comes up, your expectation is to see something, but he's actually waiting on you. What is the range that you want to look at? And what you're going to get is a graph, XY graph on the top. A nice key here in terms of status, percentage, counts. In regard to the time span outliers, you know, this is the expected threshold for this set of jobs over time. It turns out we have some outliers. Notice that I can hover over a particular point and it directs me to a particular row. So maybe we have some interest in those outliers. And by the way, that watermark can be changed. This just happened to be the default. But in this regard, we had 3 outliers. Let's roll down. We can either identify that individually, or we can come down, look for the color-coded area, and see, why are those outliers? Oh, I see, their duration is much longer than all the other jobs. And so now we're one report in, right? Remember, we did job run duration. Let's take a look at another report. And to do that, I need to hit the right, and we're going to get relative start and stop times. Let's see what we come up with here. Yeah, so with relative start and stop times, in general, you're looking for consistency. You want jobs, you know, to always be pretty much where you meant them to be. Over time, they might drift, or in a particular instance, some predecessor job, you know, maybe it got stuck, maybe an operator put it on hold, etc. And it's, you know, that or a set of jobs are outside what you would expect. And so that's where the relative start and the relative stop time report is going to come in handy. You know, we're looking for consistency. We're looking to be able to visually differentiate when perhaps there might be a problem. And once again, same kind of situation where I can pick a particular job. It can point me to a particular row. Now we're 2 reports deep. Another report that I'd like to show you. And again, right is taking me to my ability to print this out. That's my right click. My left click, which I can do here or I can do up in the screen here, is that I can then get to this. I want to show you the Gantt report. There's much better Gantt reports, but you still get the idea. He's going to be giving me color-coded status of the variation in durations of jobs. And in that regard, I might want to show you one more. And so I exited my 3rd level report, my 2nd level report, my 1st level report. I'm back here again. I'm going to try that Gantt report in a minute. We'll go in and graph this again. Oops, sorry. Just want to get one better example of our graph Gantt chart. Still got the same idea. And then finally, another key capability here. And to do this, I need to look at one of the jobs, one of these jobs. Bear with me. Is that I have the ability to make this a little bigger. And a little tiny lag there. Let's graph this, or excuse me, report on this. Look at my jobs. And I can show the output of a particular run. This being an FTP that didn't complete. We need to find one that completed. We'll get another chance to look at output in a minute. So in that regard, we've seen the three main menus here for graphing, graphic visualization in terms of jobs and their dependencies, the ability to search in all jobs or selected jobs, and a couple of the different job graph reports. And then notice app reports down here. That's really a whole new set of different reports. We'll leave our job browser behind. And before we head to reports, actually, I would like to show you a calendar graph. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at all of the calendars in this environment. Once again, if you know anything about calendars, one calendar can be comprised of multiple calendars. Some of those might be included, some of those might be excluded, some of those calendars might be consist of multiple calendars. There's a particular calendar that I am interested in, and so I'm going to do a right-click find. I'll look for a calendar that has a plus in it. Look for the highlighted yellow calendar. So you can see that highlighted up. Let's zoom in a little. And actually, let's get rid of the noise and graph this particular calendar. Flip it horizontal, flip it vertical. So again, we don't have the ability to visualize calendars in the web client or the Java client. With this tool, we do. This particular payroll calendar is designed in such a way that if it lands on a Saturday, to roll back to the next, to the previous workday. If it lands on a Sunday, to roll forward to the next workday. What that means is if Friday is a holiday, it'll roll to Thursday. If Monday is a holiday, it'll roll to Tuesday. So that's what this calendar conflict is. If I land on a Saturday, or what if I land on a Sunday, and that's what these actions are, I would roll to a particular workday, right? And when workday calendar takes into account holidays. So this is useful for changes, for discussions, for training, for that matter. And in the same way that I can come in here and use in the job graphs to get properties, I can get properties of individual calendars. This is New Year's Day, right? So New Year's Day is what? It's the first month of the year. There's my Y for January, and it's the first day of the month. There's my Y for the one of 31 days. And then finally, the idea here is that what if I were to make a change to this calendar? What jobs would be affected? Notice that I can come in here and do a reference report and say, for this selected calendar, I would like to see what the implications are. So in your mind, you said, okay, I wanted to figure out what jobs would be affected, but did you take into account the fact that connections might use calendars, or that event triggers might use calendars, right? So in this particular example, we're finding out that this job group uses this calendar. So let's leave that behind. And minor lag. And where we're headed is to our app reports. So if you remember previously, we identified those as 3 different categories. We have design reports, historical analysis reports, and housekeeping reports. Let's take a look at job size metrics. And in the first example, we want to find out the top 5 jobs that have the most jobs in them. Once again, graph on the top, chart on the bottom. And we can see that this particular job group has, 1,185 jobs in it. So these are going to answer the questions. Design reports can answer all sorts of different questions that might be posed to yourself or questions that might be posed to you. Let's take a look at job direct dependencies. So the job that has the most dependencies. Again, you have to hit view after making a change. And it has refreshed the screen. It's showing me that this particular job, right, has 22 different dependencies. Let's trace the job dependencies for that. He says, hey, that's a large graph. And you go, oh, that looks like a ball of yarn. And thus, this really points out why you have these different capabilities up here. Is that there's going to come times, depending upon the particular circumstance, where you need to declutter the display. Let's take a look, since spaced splines is unreasonable. And by the way, there's our job, is unreasonable. Let's try bundled splines. And it's a little more manageable. And let's kind of go in and see what is it exactly we're looking at. I'm rolling in, wrong way, rolling with my mouse. We can see, okay, yeah, those are groups. There's my group in question. And then if we just pick one particular area, or that'll work, you can see that as I roll over, he's actually telling me where this dependency is going from and where that dependency is going to. And if that still, doesn't please, maybe, once again, maybe you prefer 90-degree turns. Maybe you prefer, horizontal over vertical. So just a teaser in regard to a couple different types of reports that we have available to you. And kind of take a look at the various titles here. You'll notice that we have a tooltip, for job size metrics, reports. The various tooltips come up, give you a one-liner, ranked by various design, structure, and size-related metrics. So every one of those will have a tooltip. For more complete information, you would have to have the manual. You want the client tool PDF available to you. We could take a look at jobs run in a period, run statistics for jobs over a period in terms of historical analysis, jobs maybe that we want to clean up, incomplete event associations, disabled jobs. Let's take a look at jobs run in a period. Say okay. And we're going to say for, and notice he defaults to a week. We could say, just show me the abnormal jobs. I've been in demos where that's an auditing report. An auditor wants to know what jobs were abnormal last week. So 906 run instances for 87 jobs over an 8-day period, right? Out of a total of, I think it's a couple thousand. And he's taking, yeah. So out of the 2,400 jobs we had, right, we were able to find out how many were abnormal. And then once again, you know, left click, report, and this is where we could have gone into that, you know, 3-level deep set of reports. My duration analysis, my row start time, my Gantt charts, the ones that we've already looked at. So we'll leave reports behind, knowing that we didn't do a complete treatment of it, but hoping that we're piquing your interest and your curiosity in order to download the tool and investigate the reports to see if they can be of use to you. We'll take a look at some comparison capabilities now. Obviously, compare a couple jobs, job groups in particular. How about EXP new? Notice that filled there with EXP new 1 with EXP new 2. Loaded there. Do my compare. And for the database guy or gal in the audience, yeah, we can go look at individual tables, job masks, dependencies, events, but we just want to view it graphically, maybe document it. And we can see that a lot has changed between the two jobs. Originally, I had 4 groups in it, right? One called TZ and 5, 10, and 15 duration SLAs. And then what has changed? Well, it looks like I've got 2 new groups here, and that the names changed. So these are purple because we changed, you know, 15 duration to 15Z, that type of thing. So a quick and easy way to be able to do a side-by-side comparison. And maybe that's better done when they're toggled in this fashion. And you still get the idea. So once again, good for verifying that you have made a change you intended, verifying that you haven't made a change that you didn't intend, useful for documenting, useful for complying with requirements to document this, useful for collaboration, conversations, communications with your own peers or different business groups. Leave that comparison behind. Take a look at other available components, schemas, tables. I think the last thing that we'll be doing will be a quick job run search and compare. Notice that this is capable of comparing across instances, or if you prefer to think of an instance as a database, you can do that. What we're going to do is just compare a couple jobs. I've got some FTPs called get, and you'll get the quick idea. Find me some gets, and we'll just do a representative example of how this might be used. We'll pick, you know, one of these that ran, that completed normally. We'll set that to job run A at the bottom. One of these that completed abnormally. We'll set that to job run B. We'll set that to job run B. I think, there we go. It took a second. Hit our compare button. We want to see that color-coded differentiation for quick analysis. And while we're waiting for that, notice the blues, the yellows, and the pinks when I compare the run outputs. And so we can see on the left was one job it completed normally. Oops. And we can do a line-by-line comparison. So line 1, line 2, notice the bottom, line 1, line 2. So in that regard, this job failed in authentication. So something happened between the time that this job ran successfully and this job did not. Something changed. Perhaps somebody changed the runtime user. Perhaps a password expired. So with that, we'll have a few minutes left for our Q&A. So we're going to resume our slideshow and head that way. Actually, we need to talk a little about pricing.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Fred. Thank you. So we'll just take a quick minute here to talk about the components and the licensing of Explorer. So as you can see here, the middle box is the Tidal Explorer server. So that is a Windows server, as Fred had mentioned earlier, and it's what connects to the various masters and databases that you're going to analyze and report on. On the left, you have clients. So these are licensed by concurrent user. And we'll talk about pricing for all these components in a second here, but yeah, the minimum is 2 concurrent users that you can have, but you can have as many as you'd like with the product as well. And then on the right, we start with environments, and the best way to think about an environment is a production master and everything associated with it, right? So a production master, and it may have a dev and a QA master underneath it. There might be backup databases, et cetera. So for most customers, they're only going to need one environment, right? Because they're only running one production master and all the things associated. There are some of our larger clients that run, due to business unit concerns, et cetera, they run multiple masters in their environment, and they may want multiple environments. But for most customers, one environment is probably enough. And then you license the number of instances or connections, right? So each one of these master servers that you're connecting to, the production, dev, QA, et cetera, would be an instance. If there are backup masters that you want to be able to analyze and report on as well, you would have instances for each one of those that you would need to license also. So Fred, if you want to go to the next one. So the pricing goes like this. Basically, there's 3 components that you need to consider when doing licensing. So the first is the environments, right? So how many production masters, and their associated other master servers and databases do you want to report on? And each environment is $12,000. This is list pricing. The instances for each one of these priced at $5,000. So each one of those connections underneath the environment needs to be licensed, and it's $5,000 a piece, a minimum of 2 for doing comparison purposes. And then from a user perspective, we also have concurrent users, as I mentioned, and that's a minimum of 2, and those are priced at $1,000 a piece. So we do have, but if you want to click to the next one, we do have a starter pack that's available. There we go. That is a single environment with 2 instances and 2 concurrent users that is priced at $15,000. So you can start with a starter pack, which is what most customers have done, and add instances to it or add users to it as you grow it out. So that provides a savings of, I don't know, $9,000 or something like that off list for these starter packs. So just wanted to give you a quick idea about that, and certainly you can work with your sales rep on those pricing numbers and on the configurations, et cetera, as well. So Fred, I think we've got 5 minutes, so we can probably go in and do a quick Q&A, as many as we can. Now, there's a lot of questions here, so we're certainly not going to get to them all, but I'll ask a few, and then we can post the rest of the answers on the portal as well. So Fred, are you ready for a few questions? I'm going to just get a quick fire some at you. Is that all right?
We can try. Actually, the whole team can chime in regard to that.
Okay. Yeah, I think John Lewis and Ken and some others on. So first off, there's a number of questions, 4 or 5 different questions about, what you need from a server perspective. Like, is it a standalone server? Can it run on a shared application server? Should it run separate from the master and client manager? Where do you install, basically?
Sure. For the trial, just a modern day laptop would be fine. Several CPU, 8 gigabytes, 6 gigabytes of memory would be fine. I mean, if you have some monstrous set of target instances, then there might be a situation where you would want to get back to us and get some recommendations for sizing that particular environment. Maybe a separate server might be required, if you had like 16 different targets. So it varies depending upon the configuration.
And what is the overhead for the actual Tidal instances that we're connecting to?
John?
Yes, I can host that one. So basically, the overhead is pretty low because it's using a component called the master link, which is just tracking events raised by the master held in queues. So the actual overhead, it's been designed to have a very low overhead for the masters which are connected.
Okay, perfect. There's a couple questions about how far back can you go in master status for history, and how do I interrogate data beyond my current 30-day retention?
Okay, I can host that one. So if you've got 30 days of history in your database, then the reports will run against the 30 days, which is available. But as Fred said, we have the ability to save backups of the production master database as of 30 days ago. So you can have numbers of those. So you can actually connect to a database which is the live database as of 30 days ago. So it's not connected to a Tidal instance at this point in time. It's just sitting there on a server somewhere available for reporting purposes.
Okay, perfect. Is there custom dashboarding to show completion status of job groups in a single panel?
I'd have to check that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's two questions that I think are kind of related. When you look at job properties from a job graph, can the field names be customized so that users see the same labels as they do within Tidal, rather than the actual database column names? And then there's another question about comparing different environments. Can Explorer account for potential differences in names where a naming convention might be different between QA and production?
Yes, those are really good questions. And at the moment, it's not possible to do that. But certainly if there's sufficient interest, it's something that could be added.
Okay. Perfect. I see you can compare databases and schemas. Do you see index comparisons against each other, or the Tidal install indexes?
No, you're getting table and column definitions comparison. Again, it's something that could be added with sufficient interest.
Okay. Perfect. How easy is it to find one job chain amongst a large graph that was shown in the zoomed out view?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We saw a little bit of the job find, calendar find functionality, but it's actually fairly straightforward to search for jobs in very complex graphs. You can navigate them directly. It will automatically go to if it's to highlight the graph on the chart, and you can click on that job and say trace dependencies for that job, and it will go backwards and forwards through the dependency chains from that point onwards. So it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Let's see here. Maybe one or two more I can get. Can you edit the job definition or monitor the job activity in a live environment? Can you perform actions like hold a job, complete a job, etc.?
Currently, you can't. In the current version, it's a read-only application. But again, there is a possibility that may be possible moving forward, depending on what people really want in the tool.
Okay. For the percentage of jobs completed screen, how is a job running every 30 minutes tabulated toward that percentage?
So
the last question. I see we're top of the hour, so.
Yeah, I believe that's if that's related to the job run statistics. What you're seeing there is what the master is running in terms of the current number of jobs run at any point in time. So if a job's run multiple times, it will be added as a multiple times, I believe. But I can confirm that one separately.
Okay. And the last one, is there an API for Explorer? Can you automate the reports via scripts, things like that?
Again, that's something which isn't available at the moment, but there are ways of doing that sort of thing potentially in future, subject to customer demand.
Okay. And there was a question about whether the pricing that I provided was one time or per year. That's a perpetual license, those prices that I mentioned. So just so you're aware. So I think we're actually just over here, the 11 o'clock hour. So thank you all very much. It was a great attendance. So thank you very much. If you do have additional information, in fact, I think there might be one more slide on here. If you do want some additional information regarding the product, please, you can reach out to your account manager. You can reach out to sales@tidalsoftware.com or to me directly, rick.kane@tidalsoftware.com, and we can get you information. You can go onto the portal and you can download Explorer. You can trial it. Your account manager can get you a temporary trial license so you can play with it. And we'd love to talk to you about your thoughts about the product as you saw today. If there are other areas that you'd like us to take interest in and possibly expand the product use and further releases, we'd love to hear that information as well. So once again, thank you all very much for attending. Have a wonderful day, stay healthy, and we will talk soon. Thank you.